Why don't you stand by the kitchen doors? It'll keep the family photos clean. The bride, Courtney, didn't even look at me when she said it. She was adjusting her veil in the reflection of a glass wall at the Seattle Botanical Garden Conservatory. Her voice light, airy, and entirely dismissive. My seat at the head table, the one with my name card on it, was currently occupied by a man in a bespoke navy suit I had never met. You don't really fit the black tie aesthetic tonight, Lauren, she added, finally turning to me with a pitying smile. Besides, the vendor table has a great view of the orchids. I stood there in my slate gray silk dress, the humidity of the greenhouse pressing against my skin. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply walked over to the gift table. I found the heavy cream envelope with my name on it and slid it into my clutch. Inside was a cashier's check for $10,000. I turned around and walked out the front doors without saying a single word. Before I tell you what happened when the bank notifications started hitting his phone on the honeymoon, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I want to see how far this story travels. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and silence. I didn't turn on the radio. I needed the quiet to think, to let the reality of what just happened settle into my bones. That envelope in my purse, the one holding a cashier's check for $10,000. He felt like it weighed 50 pounds. It was supposed to be a gift, a gesture, a bribe. Really, a desperate attempt to buy my way into a family that had already sold my seat to the highest bidder. When I walked into my apartment, I didn't kick off my heels or collapse onto the sofa. I didn't call my best friend to vent. I went straight to my home office. I sat down, opened my laptop, and the screen glowed to life. My reflection in the monitor looked calm, terrifyingly calm. I logged into the secure banking portal. I didn't need a password manager. I knew the credentials by heart because I was the one who set them up. I navigated to the shared business accounts for Justin's tech startup. Visionary, VR. He called it. I called it a black hole. The transaction history loaded. A waterfall of red numbers. I scrolled past the venue deposit, which was $25,000. I scrolled past the catering charge. Then I saw it. 2 round-trip tickets to the Maldives. First class. Purchased yesterday on the company credit card. My card. The one I guaranteed. I didn't feel anger. Anger is hot. It's messy. What I felt was the cold, sterile precision of a forensic accountant looking at a fraudulent ledger. I opened the file marked Loan Guarantor. This was the heartbeat of his company. The server leases that hosted his entire platform required a guarantor, with a credit score over 800. That was me. Without those servers, his visionary app was just code, floating in a void. I moved the cursor to the Liability Management tab. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I thought about the folding chair by the kitchen doors. I thought about the stranger in my seat. I thought about the 10 years I spent fixing his mistakes, covering his overdrafts, and apologizing for his arrogance. I selected the option for immediate revocation of personal guarantee. A warning box popped up. This action may result in immediate suspension of services and freezing of associated assets. Are you sure? I didn't hesitate. I clicked yes. The screen refreshed. Authorization revoked. It wasn't an emotional outburst. It wasn't a tantrum. It was simply me, finally closing the books on a bad investment. As I stared at the authorization revoked message on my screen, memories didn't flood back in a warm, nostalgic wave. They came back as line items. A mental spreadsheet I had tried to ignore for a decade unrolled in my mind, tallying up the cost of my own erasure. $145,000. That was the principal. That didn't even account for the interest, or the emotional tax I paid every time I wrote a check. It started small. A security deposit for his first apartment when he had cash flow issues. Then it was the lease on the downtown office space because no landlord would trust a 24-year-old CEO with zero revenue. Then came the emergency liquidity injections, $5,000 here, $8,000 there, usually at 2 in the morning, when he was panicking about payroll. I remembered a dinner last Thanksgiving. We were at a high-end steakhouse downtown. My father, Gary, stood up, tapping his wine glass with a fork. He made a speech about Justin's visionary spirit, about how proud he was that a walker was finally going to change the tech world. My mother, Deborah, wiped a tear from her eye, beaming at her golden boy. Justin sat there, soaking it in, looking like he believed every word. When the bill came, $600 for steaks and expensive Cabernet, nobody reached for it. The waiter hovered. The silence stretched. My father patted his pockets and made a joke about leaving his wallet in the car. Justin didn't even look up from his phone. I quietly slid my card onto the tray. No one said thank you. No one even noticed. I was just the mechanism that made the transaction clear. For years, I asked myself why I did it. Why did I keep throwing good money after bad? Why did I co-sign loans for a brother who sold my seat at his wedding tonight? In the glow of my monitor, I finally admitted the truth. It wasn't because I was a good sister. It was because I was trapped. In my profession, we call it the sunk cost fallacy. It's the irrational psychological trap where you continue to invest in a failing project simply because you've already invested so much. You tell yourself that if you put in just $10,000 more, the previous $100,000 will finally pay off. If you stop now, you have to admit that all that money, all that time, and all that effort is gone forever. You have to admit you made a mistake. I had treated my relationship with my family like a bad stock. I kept buying in, hoping the market would turn, hoping that one day they would look at me and see a daughter instead of a bank account. I thought if I just paid one more bill, solved one more crisis, the return on investment would finally arrive in the form of love. But looking at the red numbers on my screen, I realized I wasn't a martyr. I was a gambler, refusing to leave the table. And tonight, I was finally cashing out. I wasn't losing a brother. I was cutting a loss. And for the first time in my life, the ledger was finally going to balance. 3 days. That was how long it took for the reality of my withdrawal to travel halfway across the world. For 72 hours, my phone had been blissful, terrifyingly silent. I went to work. I watered my plants. I drank coffee on my balcony. Then, at 6 in the morning, on a Tuesday, the screen lit up. It wasn't a text message. It was a fraud alert from the bank. Transaction: declined 5 Seasons Resort, Maldives. Amount $12,000. I stared at the notification, sipping my coffee. $12,000. That was more than the cashier's check I had taken back. It was an upgrade charge. They were trying to upgrade to the overwater villa, assuming the company card my credit would catch them like a safety net. Then came the texts. First, it was Justin. Hey, card is acting weird. Declined at the front desk. Call the bank as soon as possible. 10 minutes later, a second text. Lauren, pick up. This is embarrassing. Fix it. 20 minutes later, the tone shifted. Stop playing games. I know you saw the alerts. Unlock the accounts. We are at the front desk. Then came Courtney. Her message was a wall of text, devoid of punctuation but full of venom. You are ruining my honeymoon because you are jealous and bitter, and you can't stand that your brother is happy. Fix this now, or we are done. Finally, a voicemail from my father. Gary. I played it on speakerphone, setting the device on my granite countertop as if it were a contaminated object. Lauren, this is your father. Justin just called me from the resort. He is stranded. He says the accounts are frozen. I don't know what kind of petty tantrum you think you are throwing, but you need to grow up. You are embarrassing this family. Fix it. Now. I listened to the message twice. Petty. Tantrum. Embarrassing. There was a familiar ache in my chest. A dull, heavy throb that I had carried since childhood. But this time, I had a name for it. There is a concept I read about once called the glass child syndrome. Usually, it applies to the healthy sibling of a chronically ill or disabled child. The parents are so consumed by the high needs of one child that they look right through the healthy one. The healthy child becomes transparent. They are expected to be perfect, problem-free, and self-sustaining because the parents have nothing left to give. But in my family, Justin wasn't sick. He wasn't disabled. He was simply a narcissist. And I wasn't just healthy, I was functional. I realized then that I wasn't invisible because they didn't love me. I was invisible because I worked. I was the window they looked through to admire their son. I was the sturdy glass that kept the elements out so they could enjoy the view. You don't notice a window until it shatters. You don't thank a window for being transparent. You only scream at it when it cracks. They didn't see me as a daughter or a sister. They saw me as infrastructure. And you don't negotiate with infrastructure. You just expect it to hold the roof up. I looked at the phone. Buzzing again with a call from an international number. I didn't feel the urge to answer. I didn't feel the need to explain myself or apologize for being petty. I felt the cold, hard satisfaction of finally becoming opaque. If they wanted to see me, they were going to have to look at the cracks. The threats started arriving an hour later. Justin didn't beg anymore. He pivoted to the only tactic he knew: intimidation. If you don't unlock the accounts in the next 10 minutes, you are dead to us. Mom and Dad are writing you out of the will. You will never see your nieces or nephews if we ever have them. You are cutting yourself off from this family permanently. I read the text calmly. He was threatening to fire me from a job I had already quit. I picked up my phone and dialed my attorney. Sarah. I had retained her 3 years ago, when I first drafted the private loan agreement for Justin's bridge loan. At the time, Justin had laughed at the 50-page document, signing it without reading it because he was too busy disrupting the industry. It's Lauren, I said when she answered. I want to execute the call-on-demand clause. There was a pause on the line. Sarah knew exactly what that meant. Clause 9. 4 of our agreement stated that the lender me could demand immediate repayment of the full principal, plus accrued interest, if the borrower engaged in financial mismanagement or disparaged the lender's reputation. You're sure? Sarah asked. This is the nuclear option. Lauren, once we file the demand, the bank freezes everything attached to his EIN to secure the collateral. It's not a warning shot. It's an execution. He spent $12,000 on a hotel upgrade while insolvent, I said, my voice steady. And he just threatened me in writing. Trigger it. Done. Filings go out in 10 minutes. I hung up and turned back to my laptop. I didn't want to miss the show. At 2:15 p.m., the first domino fell. I received a notification from the bank, commercial assets frozen Visionary VR. At 2:20 p.m., the server hosting company sent an automated alert to the admin: contact me. Payment default. Services suspended. I opened Justin's company website. It didn't load. Neither did the About page. Just a blank 404 screen. Within minutes, his email and Slack servers went down. His entire tech empire built on my work collapsed the moment I withdrew support. As I watched the shutdown confirmations roll in, my phone rang. A Seattle number. This is Lauren. Marcus Thorne. We met at the wedding. The man who'd been sitting in my head table seat. He explained that Visionary VR's assets were frozen during his Series A due diligence. Then he dropped the real blow. Justin had told him the head table seat was free because I was just support staff. Someone who didn't matter. He'd moved me to the back to impress an investor. That was the moment the last of my guilt evaporated. The next morning, my family showed up at my door disheveled, panicked, broke. I opened the door but kept the security chain on. Justin begged me to stop the bank demand. Courtney screamed. My father ordered me to stop acting like a child. I'm acting like a lender, I said, sliding an itemized repayment sheet through the gap. $145,000. The price of my seat at the head table. Justin whispered that he couldn't pay. I told him he didn't lose the investor because of me. He lost him because of how he treated me. I resign, I said, and shut the door. The silence afterward felt like oxygen. I blocked their numbers, watched the Seattle sunrise, and opened the folder of loan documents on my laptop. A decade of rescues, secrets, and sacrifices. Then I deleted it all. I call it the peacekeeper's paradox. Thinking you're keeping the peace when you're really just fighting a private war so others don't have to. Letting the roof collapse was the first time I could finally breathe. If you've ever been the unseen peacekeeper in your family, share your story below. I'll read every one.